Good morning and welcome to the rule hearing regarding Florida Administrative Code Rules 65G-10.001, 10.004, and 10.005. My name is Brett Taylor and I am the representative of the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. My title with the agency is Senior Attorney. I will be presiding over today's hearing, and this hearing is being recorded. Today is January 27th, 2021. And the time is 10:04, and we'll be meeting both online and over the phone. This hearing is being held to provide members of the public with the opportunity to give commentary and input on these proposed rules. Specifically, the agency is seeking comments on the proposed rule language that was provided in the notice of proposed rule that was published on January 13th, 2021 in volume 47, issue number 8 of the Florida Administrative Register. The purpose of these rules revisions is to implement a proportion of the recent statutory changes adopted by Chapter 2020-71 Laws of Florida. The agency realizes many of you have concerns about these requirements, and many people from the agency are here today to listen to those concerns and suggested solutions. Rulemaking is a collaborative process between an agency and the public. The agency takes its partnership seriously and is here to listen to you. Before we begin, I would like to go through a few simple instructions that will help this rule hearing proceed smoothly. After my opening remarks, we will have the other agency hearing representatives introduce themselves, and then we will open up the floor for public commentary on the rules. At the time of the registration, you were asked if you wish to speak at this hearing. Based on the registration, we have about 9 speakers today. When we receive public comment, we will start with these speakers. If you wish to speak at this hearing but did not register to speak, then please use your raise your hand feature in the webinar controls and wait patiently to be called on. Or you may type in your question in the questions box of the webinar controls. We will take the additional speakers and messages as time permits. And we ask you to limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. In the interest of time, if you want to provide commentary that mirrors commentary provided previously, you can just let us know that you agree with previous comments and clarify which comments specifically you agree with. The agency is interested in your input on these rules that will implement the agency's statutory requirements in a way that meets the needs of our clients and providers. Our goal today is to listen to your feedback regarding what concerns and ideas you have with the rules. Following the hearing, the agency will be accepting written comments until Friday, January 29th, 2021, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can email your written concerns to me at brett.taylor@apdcares.org. That's brett.taylor@apdcares.org. My email address can also be found on the webinar screen. I'd like to have each agency representative introduce themselves and provide their title for the record. We can begin with Ms. Fulcher.
Good morning, everyone. This is Lorena Fulcher, and I am the Chief of Consumer Supports at the Agency for Persons with Disabilities.
Next, we have Ms. Daw.
Good morning, this is Lynn Daw, and I'm the Chief of Provider Supports with the Agency for Persons with Disabilities.
And finally, we have Mr. Brown.
Good morning. My name is Gordon Brown. I am the Program Administrator over the Training Unit in the Agency for Persons with Disabilities.
Okay, let's get started with the public comments. Before providing us with your comments, please ensure that your name and affiliation is stated on the record. Our first speaker today is Ms. Erica Lynn, and next after Ms. Lynn, we'll have Ms. Andrea Jackson. So Ms. Lynn, I'm going to unmute you now. Ms. Lynn, you unmuted. If you unmute yourself, you may speak.
Yes, could I request to be moved down to last? I'm having a technical difficulty. meeting is taking me out of all the rest of my computer, which means I can't see my notes. Is that
That's
possible that I could be moved to the last person while I work on this?
not a problem. We can do that. All right, I have muted Ms. Lind. We are going to go on to next, Ms. Andrea Jackson. Let me get you unmuted. Ms. Jackson, if you can unmute yourself, you may speak, and please state your affiliation for the record. Ms. Jackson, Andrea Jackson, if you will unmute yourself. All right, Ms. Jackson, there you go.
Are you able to hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Andrea Jackson, and I'm a waiver support coordinator in the Suncoast and the Northeast regions. But I'm going to waive. I do not wish to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jackson. All right, we were going to go to next. We're going to have Patty Rendon, and after Patty Rendon, we'll have Carlos Roble. Let me see if I can unmute Ms. Rendon. All right, Ms. Rendon, there you go. You may speak, and please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Patty Rendon, and I'm with the Columbus organization. So I just have a few comments this morning. One being 65G-10.004, sections 3 and 4. It says in there that basic training must be taken, any basic training taken on a periodic basis would not count as the in-service training for WSC. However, I was between that and then in 4, it talks about level 1 and level 2 being required after the effective date of this ruling. I was requesting that we add a line that states that the level 1 and the level 2 training, along with Social Security awareness, person-centered planning, support plan training provided by APD would be counted for any first-year waiver support coordinator as their 18 hours of required training, as that this training, those trainings during the first year constitutes far more than the 18. And so it is not written anywhere in this rule that we could do that. Also in 65G-10.004.7a, I would ask that it speaks regarding having the level 1 competency assessment completed within 90 days of the effective date of this rule for any current support coordinators. I would ask that be extended to 180 days, knowing that July is an extensive month of a new fiscal year and review of cost plans, et cetera. It is an extensive time with iConnect changes if we look over the history of the last 3 years. And in order for this time, which is going to be a time-consuming venture, I would say that any current support coordinator needs additional more than 3 months to complete this. I would also extend that in 65G-10.004.6F, in which the level 2 training needs to be completed within 90 days of passing the level 1. I would ask that be extended to at least 120 days, as APD has, over the course of time, not always completed their regional specific, which will now be the level 2 training within a 90-day period. They work very diligently in trying to do it every 3 months, but it is not always within a 90-day period. Also in 65G-10.005, section 3, I would ask that that would be changed to the waiver support coordinator may take up to 18 hours per year towards their annual in-service training requirements by attending webinars, training offered during monthly meetings, or other trainings conducted or organized by APD itself. There is no reason why any trainings at APD should not count towards that 18, and we should have the ability to attend all APD trainings to count for all 18 hours. I do thank you very much for allowing the comments, and we'll send in anything in writing.
Thank you, Ms. Rendon. I appreciate that. Do any of our presenters have any response for that?
Hey, this is Lorena Fulcher. I just wanted to thank you, Patty, for doing a thorough review and giving us some clear comments. So we look forward to looking at them.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Carlos Roble. Let me get you unmuted. One moment. All right, Mr. Roble, you are currently unmuted. You can speak, and please introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning. Carlos Robles from Advanced Coordination. Basically, my concern right now is the two training, the level 1 and level 2. We substitute the statewide and the region-specific level trainings. And my concern right now is with a new waiver support coordinator hiring. Let's say that if we have a new support coordinator right now, the timeline in order to get, because the new support coordinator is going to be needed to certify the fourth support coordinator. The timeline in order to get this coordinator, approved before the timeline, July 1st. Basically, I'm confused if search out any statewide available training, and then I know that the training has to be retaken anyway. So basically, that is my concern. How this is going to play out, let's say with a support coordinator agency that have a good candidate now to be a support coordinator and willing to be a support coordinator. And I really don't know if send the support coordinator to the statewide and then take the level 2 on level 1 or level 2, the new training, or just wait for the new training, and when those new training are going to be available for everybody. I know that the old support coordinator, we have to take the level 1. But the new one, they have to take 2. So I don't know if you have more specific information about the timeline when these training are going to be in Florida train. That is my only concern right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roble. Do any of your presenters have any response to Mr. Roble's comments?
Thank you so much for your questions. As a clarification, whenever we start accepting the applications for the qualified organizations, those individuals who have had the statewide pre-service training, you can submit the application with that proof of training. We are currently working on the finalization of the level 1 and level 2 training. But for those individuals who you would need for your minimum 4 support coordinators for the qualified organization implementation, they can complete the current statewide training as that requirement. And you are correct that all waiver support coordinators will need to complete the level 1 training once that's available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next speaker is going to be Veronica Neria. And after Ms. Neria, we will have Ms. Daniela Font. So Ms. Neria, I have unmuted you. You may please unmute yourself and you can speak when you're ready.
Hi, this is Veronica Neria. I'm Waiver Support Coordinator, and I have a few comments and questions and clarifications on 65G 10.004 Section 5B. It says trainees who do not pass the level 1 assessment within 30 days of the level training must retake the level 1 training before they may retake the level 1 competency-based assessment. So when I read that, it makes it seem like there's 2 assessments that need to be completed. That's not clear. And as we're going through these rules, what is this assessment going to look like? I didn't see any example unless I overlooked it. So that's my concern or question. So there's 2 assessments with level 1. And then section 65G 10.004, section 5.6, where it talks about level 2 training. Level 2 training is a training that actually shows the waiver support coordinator's ability to provide services to the individual. I still don't understand what the level 1 assessment is going to do, because it's when we go back to 65G section 7B, that says if they don't pass the competency-based assessment after the second try, they're no longer going to be a waiver support coordinator. To me, an assessment just shows whether you're able to take a test or not. Are you able to understand the question correctly? It doesn't show your competency to provide adequate person-centered care to the individuals. And I believe that there needs to be something else done, not, okay, after the second try, you're terminated. What if we have coordinators that are not able to take tests, are poor test takers, but they're able to provide and know the rules and know when they're supposed to visit the individuals, how to visit them, how to speak to them about their rights. And one of, we have ACA, we have Clarent that does our review. They look through the chart, they see that we're doing person-centered. So I don't understand the purpose of an assessment. I understand the training, I understand it, but to not pass the second time and to be terminated, your livelihood, there just has to be a different process. So that's my concern regarding 65G-10.004 section 7 and B. And then also in 65G-10.005, support coordination and service training. It's prior to this proposed rule, we've always had to have 24 hours of in-service training. And it's not clear whether it's 18 hours of training, 24 hours, or 30, because on 65G-10.005, Section 3, it says support coordinators may take up to 12 hours per year towards their annual in-service training requirements by attending webinars, training during the month. And then on 65G-10-005, 1, it says all support coordinators must attend a minimum of 18 hours of job-related in-service training annually. So when you add the 18 and the 12, yeah, it says up to 12, but it doesn't specifically say 24 hours is continuously to be required for the year, or is it 30? So there's clarification as how many pre-service training hours is APD wanting the coordinators to fulfill. And keep in mind, throughout the past years, it's been harder and harder to obtain those 24 hours of training. So to have coordinators do a 30, it's been a little challenging, especially when APD no longer provides as much training and different services for the coordinators. And those are my comments and suggestions.
Thank you, Ms. Neria. Do any presenters have any response or comments?
Yes, we really appreciate you giving us feedback and letting us know your concerns. I did want to mention why we have the competency-based assessment. It's a statutory requirement in section 3930663 of the Florida statutes. So the way it'll work is all the existing support coordinators will take an online self-paced training and then a competency-based assessment after that training. The assessment will be an open book and open note assessment. Support coordinators can use the information that they have from the training. There'll be learner guides and then any other notes you have to take the assessment. And then in terms of new support coordinators coming into the profession, new support coordinators would be required to take the same thing, as well as the level 2 training at our region office and assessment that corresponds with that. Both assessments are open book, open note kind of assessments. There was a question I think you had about the number of in-service hours, And it is 18 hours. So I hope that provides the clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Fulcher. All right, our next speaker.
Just add one other thing, that there is only one assessment associated with the level 1 training and one assessment associated with the level 2. I think that was a question as well, if there were one or two.
Good point. Thank you, Ms. Dahl. All right, our next speaker is going to be Ms. Daniela Font, and after Ms. Daniela Font is going to be Mr. Jorge Font. All right, I'm now going to unmute Ms. Daniela Font, and please introduce yourself. Looks like you have self-muted yourself again. If you will unmute yourself, you'll be free to speak. All right, Ms. Font, you can always, if it looks like your mic isn't working, you feel free to please write your questions into the questions box. And we'll move on to Mr. Jorge Font. Is Mr. Jorge Font able to speak? Hello, Mr. Font, you may speak.
Can you hear me?
Hello, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Now you can turn up your volume just like a little bit more, but yeah, we can hear you. Please introduce yourself and feel free to speak.
Okay, I have a question on 65G-10.005. Line 1 states that there will be 18 hours of in-service training annually, but then line 3 says up to 12 hours per year can be allowed to be attended by webinars, training offered during monthly meetings, and other trainings conducted by or organized by APD. What are the other 6 supposed to be? What format is that is possible for the other 6? Hello?
One moment. Let me see, maybe. Can you repeat that last part one more time? It was hard. It was difficult to hear.
Sure. The line states 18 hours in service training. Line 3 states 12 hours for specific formats. How are the other 6 supposed to be? What formats can we take in? It's usually, especially right now, everything is webinar. But then it limits the 12 to 3 types of formats. What are the other formats that we can use to achieve or complete the other 6 credit hours or units?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Font. Do we have any presenters having response to Mr. Font's questions?
If I understood what the question was, and it was a little bit difficult to understand, just to clarify, the requirements on an annual basis for all support coordinators is 18 hours. We have indicated in the draft rule that up to 12 hours of that can be from any training that is offered by APD. Those are typically offered, as you reflected, via webinars. Those also could be training that is offered in the monthly support coordination meetings that the agency provides, typically at the regional office level. The requirements of that 18 hours does also refer to other ways that you could get those training services, whether it was additional workshops that you were attending, online information that you were obtaining. For that training, you would just need to keep your documentation of what that training was using the training form, which would be reviewed at the time of your clearance review. So I hope that answers your questions. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. All right, we have next, we're going to have Ms. Penny Shinneman. And then after Ms. Shinneman, we will have Janella Fleming. I'm now unmuting Ms. Shinneman. If you please introduce yourself, you may speak.
I'm so sorry. Could you come back to me at the end?
Not a problem.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Ms. Janella Fleming. Let me unmute you. All right, Ms. Fleming, I have unmuted you. You're now self-muted. If you unmute yourself, you may introduce yourself and you may speak.
Yeah, I didn't sign up to speak.
No problem. Okay, now we have, let's see, if Ms. Erica Lynn, are you able to speak now? Let's see, I'm gonna unmute you. Ms. Lynn, you're unmuted. Are you free to speak now?
It says I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear us?
Great.
Okay, good.
Yes, so we're in good shape. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is really thank APD for the further development of this rule, especially the inclusion of more areas for education regarding people with developmental disabilities. I think we're all in agreement that we want to foster the development, skills, knowledge, and abilities of support coordinators, and expanded educational opportunities are a good way to do that. In regards to specific rules here, for example, 65G-10.004, number 5, the website that's referred there does not have the training curriculum yet. I assume you are aware of that because every link in this rule so far doesn't have the supporting information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. All right. Okay, for 65G-10.0045C, in no instance shall a trainee be allowed to take the assessment more than 2 times within a 12-month period. You've already answered a bunch of my questions. I recommended that it not be timed and it be open book, that we need to make accommodations for support coordinators who have disabilities that could impact their ability to complete a test. And examples of that would be dyslexia, learning disabilities, a native language other than English, test anxiety, sight impaired, etc. I'm mentioning these now just to reinforce that, which I believe Ms. Fulcher already mentioned. I still recommend that the number of permitted assessments in a year be moved from 2 to 3. And I think I explained why that should be a little bit later. Also in 65G-10.0045C, that also is a rule that says you only have 2 attempts, and I recommend that that be changed to 3 attempts. In 65G-10.004, I would like to suggest that the agency permit this class to also be over Zoom along with in-person. Traveling and the expense of a week out of town is a hardship, particularly for WSCs with disabilities, or they have children at home to care for, or elderly family members to care for in the home, and it's difficult to arrange overnight care. For 65G-004.6F, this says trainees must successfully pass the level 2 assessment within 90 days of passing the level 1 assessment. So I would have to ask then, how often are these in-person trainings going to be offered? What happens if level 2 is not offered within 90 days of passing level 1? And how much notice will be provided to trainees on the schedule and location of the level 2 trainings? Because again, if you don't have advanced notice, this could be really difficult for people who have other responsibilities at home. 65G-10.0047B. This one says support coordinators who fail the level 1 competency-based assessment under this section will be allowed to retake the level 1 training and level 1 competency-based assessment. Upon failing to successfully pass the assessment after a second attempt, the agency will terminate the support coordinator's med-waiver service agreement. I would state that terminating the MWSA after 2 failed tries is too harsh. A third try should be permitted. Losing the MWSA is also losing a certification and a career. And especially at the beginning, while things are being ironed out, a third try should be permitted. I would recommend to change the language to after a third attempt, if what we want, as I understand it, is to provide higher quality of support coordinators. It doesn't really matter how long it takes for a WSC to learn the information, just that they learn it. And this would arise from my years of teaching in community college. I was teaching very difficult courses to people who are planning to be nurses. And the example that was given to me was, is if the point is to get to California from Florida, it doesn't matter how long it takes to get there. If somebody drives and takes 3 days to drive to California, that's great, they got there. If someone else walks to California in 3 months, it doesn't matter. They both reached California and neither fails California. So I'd really like to give trainees at least one more chance. Okay, this, I think you've cleared up 65G-10.0053. APD is intending that support coordinators are limited to 12 hours per year of training from APD. And I just wanted to make sure that was what APD really wanted to say, and Ms. Fulcher indicated that it is. The other 6 hours have to be taken from an outside source. For 65G-10.0057B, support coordinators may receive in-service training credits by attending seminars, workshops, home study courses, and webinars presented by other government agencies, certification organizations that specialize in case management, or professional organizations designated by the agency. And then the listing can be found at a web link there that doesn't have the information. I really appreciate the changes that have been made to this because it's allowing a lot more resources to be used for learning. Could you clarify that these continuing education organizations designated by the agency, for example, in nursing, many organizations are certified to provide continuing education. There's no such thing as an overall organization that covers all of nursing. So if I were to use something on, for example, developmental disabilities, I wouldn't be able to use that because it's going to be through CEU for nurses, and that wouldn't be on your list. So I would recommend saying, why not say CEs from certified professional continuing education providers are permitted to be used as long as the topic applies to developmental disabilities, case management, rehabilitation, for professional licensing for RNs, LPNs, PT, OT, speech language therapists, and other professionals. This is especially important to WSCs who've been doing this work for many years and even decades, requiring truly experienced WSCs to continue to take over and over again the same topics in relation to the people with developmental disabilities is time wasted. If we want to foster the development of a higher level of knowledge and skills with our WSCs, approving more sources of education is to be encouraged. My recommendation would be to expand the list of providers for CEs to encourage WSCs to more thoroughly develop their skills and levels of understanding. 65G-10.0056, any support coordinator who has received and maintains certification from the Commission on Rehabilitation Counselor Certification may satisfy the 18-hour annual in-service training requirement. I would really like to know what is special about this certification. I have looked it up on the web. It certainly appears to be an excellent certification, but I wonder why this program is getting special treatment. This rule also implies that support coordinators with this certification do not need to take any of the routine WSC trainings, WSC meetings, APD and services, etc., which to me doesn't seem like a good idea. I also forgot to say at the beginning that I agree with all of Patty Rendon's suggestions and thank her for making them. And then I just have one last question. When a solo practitioner moves to an agency, does her training year change? For example, the solo provider has a review year, as you know, established with Clarence at this point, that is the calendar year, but the agency, for example, has a review year that is the fiscal year. So does her review year change to the agency, and is there going to be any accommodation for that person having fewer than the required numbers of training when that change is made? And those are my comments and questions. And again, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lynn. As always, you have a wealth of comments to provide. With that saying, I'm hoping you'll be able to provide some of this in writing for us. We can also consider that way. And also, for any suggested language you provide, please provide that in writing too, so we can consider adding that to the rule as well. Do we have any presenters? Do you have any?
Is it possible?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I was just asking if it's possible to get answers to my questions about the rehabilitation counselor certification and also the changes from solo to agency for the training requirements.
Yes, ma'am. I was going to hand it over to our presenters. Does anybody have any response to any of her questions?
I just want to echo what Mr. Taylor said. Thank you so much for your really great and thoughtful review of the draft rule and some really great recommendations for us to take back and look to. Some questions that I think you had also raised were related to the requirement that the support coordinator have the level 2 training within 90 days of the level 1 training and how often that would be provided. Those trainings will be offered at the regional offices on a 90-day time period. We are looking at making sure that as we get to the point that we're offering that level 2 training, that it is posted on the APD website and the training calendar, so that the support coordinators that are needing to get that training will know when those sessions are being offered. We're also talking to the regions about how we can stagger those training sessions to make it more easily as an easier accommodation for support coordinators that are needing that training. The reference in the training rule, draft rule related to the Commission on Rehabilitation Counselor Certification was an example of a training that would be beneficial to support coordinators as it relates specifically to employment, which is, of course, an important initiative. The other references to the other list of certification organizations that we've indicated that we will provide as a list was really to kind of help as a resource to support coordinators as they're looking for those additional training hours that will be offered. And of course, we have reduced the requirements from the 24 to the 18. As clarification, yes, we've said of those 18, 12 could be those sessions that you're getting from the agency itself. And we have expanded some of the options of where you can get that training. And thank you for acknowledging that we have made some changes to that. And really, quite honestly, that was related to some of your really great comments from the previous workshop. As it relates, I just want to make sure that I'm clearly understanding what your question is related to a solo that is joining a qualified organization. I'm not quite sure I'm clear on what your question is there. I think it's related to their credit of when their hours would start, but I want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah, that would be the case. I've got a support coordinator on the calendar year, but my agency is on the fiscal year. So when Delmarva or Clarence comes in September, what are they going to look at? Are they going to expect her to have the whole thing done by June 30th? Or is there going to be some accommodation for that?
Okay, and I appreciate that comment. I think that's something we're going to need to take into consideration and provide some clarification to the support coordination agencies for that going forward. We will be posting some frequently asked questions related to the questions that came out of today's workshop or hearing, excuse me.
Thank you. Can I get one more clarification?
Yes.
I think what you said, thank you. I think what you said in terms of the rehabilitation counselor certification, is that something that you just do once and then it counts for your continuing education? It's not something that says if you have this certification, you never have to do any more continuing education. Is that accurate?
That would account for a 1 year. The 18 hours, that is a recurring requirement annually for support coordinators that would count for that 1 year that was taken.
And to perhaps add some more to that.
Thank you.
For that certification entity, they actually have their own in-service or continuing educational credits training. That's actually more severe, and actually it's actually a stronger requirement than what we require. So that's why we're saying is if you are certified with that entity, you're already taking more than what we would be providing to you through us with the 18 hours. They have to take a lot more. So essentially, as long as they're certified, it means they're taking those in-service trainings with them that they're to continue the certification. And so that's why we're saying they don't have to take additional certification from us. But I hope that clarifies that response, that answer.
Thank you.
All right, and we do have one more speaker, Ms. Schienemann, if she is ready. Let me unmute her. All right, Ms. Schienemann, I have unmuted you. You're ready to go if you're able to.
Yes, I just have one question to clarify about the attending the support coordinator meetings. I know that the person managing the organization must attend and that they can't send somebody in their place. But all support coordinators within the organization may attend, that's my question, and receive credit for it. Is that correct? Towards the 18 hours.
Thank you. Do any of my presenters have any response to her question?
If the question is, does each support coordinator have to attend the trainings offered by the region? They can. That is one of the ways that they can get their training. Some of their training hours, they would each get credit for those trainings that were offered by the agency that offered training credits. Each support coordinator would get that credit for that. I think you were referencing the requirement for owners, operators, and managers to attend some of the monthly support coordination meetings, but that is aside from the individual support coordinators themselves and their requirement for their 18 hours of training each year.
Okay, so just so I clearly understood what you said, so each support coordinator can attend the support coordination meetings individually and receive credit toward their 18 CEUs. Is that correct? May take up to 12 hours per year.
Each support coordinator has to have 18 hours of training per year. Of that 18 hours, 12 of that can be obtained from trainings that are offered by the agency, whether that is the monthly support, the webinars that are offered, or whether those are monthly support coordination meetings that are hosted by the regions when there's training. That's what that's referring to.
Okay. Also, some regions allow 2 credits or 2 CEUs per support coordinator meeting. Will that be standardized to 1 credit, or is it as each region does it on their own? If some regions allow 2 credits and other regions don't give credits at all, and then some give only one credit if a training is offered, but not always giving credit at all, just for attending. That's how it is right now. But will that be uniform?
Well, that is a really great comment. We appreciate that feedback on that. And it's really based on whether there is training that is occurring during the meeting, or is it more transactional and just information sharing in the meeting. But that is a really great comment that we will certainly take into consideration in terms of looking at standardizing some of those topics that are covered in those meetings for that purpose.
Right, because just so I understand, attending a support coordination meeting, if there is no credit offered by that region, then that's not counted as our clearance review. Right now, they do not count that unless it is signed or there is a certificate given by the region, which some regions don't give certificates unless there is a specific training being offered, usually by another person outside the APD regional staff.
And that's really great feedback for us to hear. So again, we can look at that process that we currently have in place to make it more clear for support coordinators seeking to get your required in-service hours.
Okay, thank you. I
Thank you
just
so
have
much.
another, pardon me?
I just said thank you.
Oh, thank you. I have one other question. I hope it's okay to ask during this meeting. It's regards to how billing is done by the organization. I'm asking if there are equal members in an organization, can each support coordinator bill on their own? I know it goes into one account by ACA, and then that is divided up to each support coordinator according to their caseload. But, or is the manager or supervisor the only person who can bill, because the password is mandated we don't share it. But I don't know if sharing it with other support coordinator count, or to a person that you hire for billing. Like one person is supposed to have the password. So I just wanted clarification on that.
Well, this particular hearing is related to the training rule, which is not specific to the billing, but we are never allowed to share any credentials or passwords with anyone else. Just as clarification for those qualified organizations that are standing up, the individual support coordinators, while they do have a Medicaid number, their Medicaid numbers have to be linked to the group number, and the billing must occur through that process. So it would need to be whatever individual is billing on behalf of that QO for those services.
Okay, so I understand that it's linked, but can each, if there's 6 support coordinators, can all 6 bill for themselves?
No.
Okay, so it has to be one person. All right. Also, I just wanted to clarify about getting credit from other places, for instance, a medical conference. If I can get credits if it pertains, like for instance, osteoporosis topic. I have clients that have that, or diabetes, or liver functions, these kind of things that help with the medical condition of our consumers. Would that count towards, right now it does count because it's person-centered. Would that be considered person-centered training?
If you look in the language of the draft rule, it says that the 18 hours have to be job related. And so for those individuals that you may be serving on your caseload who have specific medical conditions, those you need to be able to relate those workshops and trainings that you go to the individuals that you support as well. There's also a form that is referenced in the draft rule, which is the documentation of training that you receive. You would just need to document that on that form, and when your clearance review is scheduled and they're asking to see the proof of the training, they'll be looking at that documentation at that time.
Okay, so that would be allowed. If I attended a medical conference, I just document that I'm taking one of the classes in there on, say, diabetes. So I could understand it better, so that the caregivers, and I'm more on par with understanding everything, and that relates to my job training for my consumers. Is that correct? That would be.
If you look at 65G-10.005 in parens 2, and it lists the trainings, it says that these topics may include but are not limited to. So if you look at that list, it does reference physical health and well-being, for example. So again, the training that you're getting, that you will be documenting and showing to Clarence, needs to relate specifically to your services that you render and the individuals that you support.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Schoeneman. That was all of our registered speakers. What I'm going to do now is we are going to move on to some of the written questions and comments we had received during the hearing. And after that, we will, if time permits, if anybody who wants to speak afterwards, please have your hand raised and we'll get to you after the comments. All right, so the first written comment that I have, will APD provide more training opportunity so waiver support coordinators can meet these requirements? I'm assuming these are relating to the in-service training. Do we have any presenters who want to speak to that?
So again, the requirements for training for support coordinators has been reduced from 24 to 18. And we have said that you could get up to 12 hours of that from the agency. There is not a plan at this point for the agency to offer up to the 18 hours. We believe it's important for support coordinators and for their professional development to be able to access training outside of what the agency presents to meet those 18-hour requirements.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Moving on to the next question, somewhat related. Relating to that question, excuse me, do all 18 hours of in-service training need to be job related? So turn over to our presenters.
Yes, they do need to be job related, which is referenced in the draft rule 65G-10.0051. They must attend 18 hours of job related in-service training annually. So yes, it must all be job related.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Our next question, will the level 1 assessment be available prior to the rule promulgation in order to allow existing WSCs to complete early without being subject to the penalty rules in 65G-10.004 section 7? I'll turn it over to our presenters so they have any response to that question.
Hey, this is Lorena. We don't have a identified launch date for the assessment, but we'll announce the start date in the future. We're pilot testing. Of course, the rule draft language requires the level 1 training within 90 days of the effective date of the rule. And so the agency will ensure it's ready so that that standard can be met.
Thank you, Ms. Fulcher. Move on to our next question. If waiver support coordinator is rendering services in multiple regions, do they need to attend level 2 in all regions they render or just one? All right, turn over to our presenters.
That is a really great question, and no, they will not need to attend it in all of those different regions. The level 2 training is going to be the same training offered across all regions of the state. And so no, it will not be required that you would attend it in multiple regions if you serve more than one region.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Moving on to our next question. Other than WSC meetings and APD organized trainings, where can I attend trainings to get the hours for in-service?
If you're referencing beyond the 12 hours that you can get through the agency, if you look in the draft rule, there are a listing of additional topics. And so the support coordinator would need to seek those different sessions related to those topics that are used. And again, that is not an exhaustive list, but as we've discussed, also looking at the individuals that you support and what might be some topics that would directly relate to them. Those could be community activities or workshops that are sponsored. It could be seminars or workshops that are held in different locations of the state. There's quite a few of different opportunities for training that are offered by other sources outside of APD.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. I believe that is all of our written questions. And I see that we have 3 people who have their hands raised. Now, 2 of them I know have already spoken, so we'll go with the one who hasn't just yet. Miss Evelyn Joseph Laravel, I'm unmuting you.
Hi, I agree with the previous coordinators as far as regarding the the level 1 and level 2 competency. For somebody who is dedicated and and enjoyed being a waiver coordinator and now failing an assessment, to be terminated, that's really harsh. The other thing I have a question about, and then thank you for, I did have a question regarding CRC, which already been explained already. The other one is about for coordinators on 0.9 65G-10 .004 regarding coordinators who left, who resign and wants to come back with after 12 months and have to take all the basic training in pre-service level 1 and level 2. I really think that's also pretty much a lot for somebody. You have regular job. You don't forget learning iConnect and providing case management. You don't forget those stuff. Those are skills that people have learned, and you have passed those assessments. And let's say an individual go away for family leave and decide, okay, now I can come back. I would like to return as a WSC, to be expected to do all that all over again. Those are skills that you have learned, and you most likely wouldn't forget. I can understand with certain stuff, with changes happening with iConnect and the system and everything, but that individual would be getting training through whichever agency they joined with. So I think that should be revised and be reconsidered, considering that some trainings have a 2-year valid. I think that should be reconsidered.
Thank you, Ms. Joseph Loreville. One thing I can request that for anything, just really for anybody, if you have any suggested language, please email it to me. We will be happy to consider that and going forward with this proposed rule language. And thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
We have 2 people with their hands raised. Once again, we have Ms. Penny Schooneman. Do you have any more comments you want to add?
Yes, I do have one question. If a support coordinator is in a qualified organization, say in one region, but she is serving clients in 2 regions, but no other support coordinators in her qualified organization are serving 2 regions except herself, and she needs coverage, for instance, would she be able to ask another qualified organization support coordinator in that other region to cover her, or is it mandatory to be covered only by the support coordinators within her qualified organization? Am I clear about my question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Schooneman. I'll hand this over to our panelists.
And it was a little difficult to understand. Is that specific to the mentorship? Is that what you're asking?
No, ma'am. It's if say I have to have coverage, I'm in 2 regions, but no one else in my organization is in 2 regions except me. can I ask somebody in the other region to cover me if they're in a separate qualified organization? Or do I have to only use people within the qualified organization? If I have to take a leave of absence, if I'm going to be out of the country, and I have somebody covering one region, but I still need somebody in the other region.
Oh, I apologize. I understand. You're talking about your backup for coverage, right? Okay. Thank you for that question and clarification. I misunderstood what you're asking. Yes, that would need to be covered by someone within your qualified organization, because that's who has, from a HIPAA standpoint, that's who would have the ability to have access to those clients.
Okay, so I could not ask another support coordinator in the other region in a qualified organization to be my backup.
That should be within your qualified organization itself, correct?
Okay, so I had another question in regards to that. Sorry, just lost it. Okay, well, I guess that answers my question. Thank you. If I have another, I'll write it down and email it.
Thank you, Ms. Schoeneman.
Thank you.
All right, moving on once again to, I see Ms. Veronica Neria has her hand raised. Ms. Veronica, do you have any further want to add to the, any comments you want to add?
Yes, actually, and thank you very much for listening to my question right now. On 65G-10.0051, I just have, I guess, clarification, because I understand, my understanding is there's only 18 hours of trainings required. So it was reduced from 24 to 18. And then down below it says up to 12 hours of webinars and monthly meetings, but the maximum is 18. But then in 65G-10.005, it says attend a minimum of 18 hours of job-related in-service trainings. So are we supposed to continue to do the minimum is everything that qualifies from 2A through Q, or is that supposed to say minimum of 6 hours? So that's my question and clarification. I keep hearing different stories or different statements. You could use up to 12 hours of support coordination, but then that's not going to be 18 hours of job related. So I'm a little bit not clear as to 65G-10.0051. Is it 18 or minimum of 6? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Neria.
I'm sorry that that's not clear. So let me see if I can try to clarify. On an annual basis, each support coordinator must have a minimum of 18 hours of in-service training. Of that 18 that you're required to have, you can obtain up to 12 of those 18 from those webinars or trainings that are offered by APD. So the total amount that must be obtained each year by support coordinators is 18.
So then 6 hours of job related is needed then, up to minimum of 6 then.
If you obtain the other 12 from APD.
Okay.
So that would, if you did obtain all 12 from APD, that would mean to meet your minimum training requirements for the year, yes, you would need to have an additional 6 that could be from any of those topics that are referenced in parens 2, or other topics that are specifically relate back to your responsibilities and duties as a support coordinator. Does that help clarify your question?
Yes and no. Yes, I understand, but when Clarence comes and reviews, if they see this, if we don't have 18 hours minimum of job related, we get dinged for not having the training. Currently, I think it's either minimum of 4 or 6 hours of job related. So we may need to restate what it says, minimum of 18 hours of job related. That way it gives us the possibility of having 12 hours elsewhere.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, are you asking that you have to have 12 from APD, because you do not have to have 12 from APD?
No. Do we have to? Because right here on 65G-10, it says the minimum of 18 hours of job-related services. Right now, it reads, I have to have a minimum of 18 hours of job-related in-service training.
That's correct.
Yes. So is that supposed to be 6 or is it 18?
On an annual basis, each support coordinator has to have a total of 18. When clearance comes in to review, you're going to provide them with that documentation. There is contained in the rule a form, an in-service training form, where you can document your sessions that you received, as well as your documentation that you may have received from APD. If you attended the monthly support coordination meetings and there was training offered, you attended the webinars that APD routinely offers, you have to have documentation of all of that training when clearance comes in to review.
Oh, okay.
So all 18 hours have to be related to your job related, your in-service training.
Oh, okay. See the way it read previously, when it says job related, it means like voc rehab and all those trainings. So when I read that, that's my interpretation of it. I see what you're saying. All anything pertaining to support coordination.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I hope Clarence sees it as that as well, because when I first eyeball it, to me, it makes it seem like I have to have 18 hours in this area only. Those are the minimum requirements.
Yes, okay. and we will make sure that Clarence is clear on that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Suggested language, like you've talked about, if you have any suggested language that you think would make that more clear, as Mr. Taylor had indicated, if you would provide that information to him, we'd certainly want to look at that.
Okay, definitely will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dahl. Thank you, Ms. Neria. And to help clarify for everybody that Clarence has had input, and they are working with us regarding the rules, so they are aware of what's going on, and they are aware of the changes that are being made. So they are already in the know as far as what's going on. So any concerns about that, I hope that leads to those concerns. All right, we do have one more hand raised. We have Miss Alessandra Davalos. I am going to unmute you. All right, you are self-muted. If you will unmute yourself, you may speak.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Not a problem. Well, okay, well, since all the comments have been made, I want to thank everybody for their participation in this rule hearing. Again, the agency will accept written comments pertaining to these rules until close of business, 5 p.m. Eastern on Friday, January 29th, 2021. At the email address on the webinar screen, once again, that's brett.taylor@apdcares.org. Comments received after this time will not be included in the record. This hearing is now concluded. The time is 11:17. Thank you, everyone.